Hello, ladies and gentlemen of YouTube. I am Negasonic, and with me I have the wonderful, audacious, and truly handsome King Orange.
Hello. Good to see everyone. Glad that I got invited. Granted, if he didn't invite me, I'd probably force choke him, but who's asking?
That was me being force choked.
Noted.
Okay,
So, yeah, I'm happy to be invited.
okay. So what we're going to be doing today is to give a little bit of background information about what was it, 5 or so years ago. Um, Jensaarai One actually made a questionnaire. Well, he answered a questionnaire that was submitted to him by somebody else, and so I took the liberty of not only being inspired by this, but I modified it. So now, oh, hang on a second. Keep. Sorry about that. Um, so we're gonna do a modified version, and it's actually, and we're both gonna answer, and yeah, that's basically what this whole video is.
Alrighty. So, I'm ready when you are, Negasonic. Just let me know when you want to get to the questions.
Okay. All right. So let's get started. So the first question is, if you were a Force user, what faction would you be in?
Okay, do you want to answer this one first, or you want me to do it first?
You're the guest. I'll let you go first.
Alrighty. So I So if we're looking at this under the assumption that I would have to choose a faction, um, that's the thing, because really, to a degree, I kind of wouldn't want to associate myself with any of them because every single Star Wars faction kind of has like their own set of, or at least when it comes with the Force wielding factions, the Jedi, the Sith, Gray Jedi, a lot of it light side and dark side cultists. It's like all of them have a lot of issues and they have more in common than people want to believe, because the whole thing is that when you look in the EU and how the Jedi and the Sith were at war for like thousands of years, it's like both sides were doing some pretty nasty shit and they were contradicting themselves constantly. So really at that point, I kind of just have more my own agenda, I guess you could say, where I would just want to use the Force and just try to establish maybe just a galactic government, or maybe a mercenary group or something. But I guess if someone had to twist my arm until I made a decision, I'd probably say the Sith, only because it's a lot easier to kind of implement those sort of ideas within through the Sith system. The problem with the Jedi is that literally it's like they're trying to play a lot of the galactic, I guess you could say the galaxy. It's like they're trying to play it by their own rules when, as the Sith kind of mentioned, it's like, when if you read the Revenge of the Sith novelization, part of the reason why the Jedi failed by Revenge of the Sith was, a big problem with Yoda, and it was something that was being critiqued by Windu and a lot of other Jedi, was that they were treating a lot of what was going on as kind of like they were treating the hunt for Sidious like treating it like the ancient Jedi versus Sith wars, when at this point it was a different game with different rules. And it's really the Jedi's lack of adaptability that kind of makes it where, I hate to say it, but being part of the Jedi Order is kind of a death trap to a degree.
Yeah, that makes sense. Um, so for me, I'd probably be a gray Jedi because I don't want to be a pure Jedi, and I don't want. And it's not that the Sith are a bad faction. I mean, they are, but what I see is most of it comes down to their ideology and how they interpret the galaxy. Basically, if you look at it, a lot of the great Sith Lords ended up just being murderous psychopaths. See Darth Nihilus and Darth Sidious. I mean, Sidious had to build a big battle station that was capable of destroying a planet in order to basically subjugate the galaxy. Because fear tactics through troopers wasn't enough anymore. And Nihilus, it was basically he could just force drain a planet in order to sustain himself, and that's all he did. It's it's very that's kind of why I'm not a Sith person, but I do appreciate like the improvement through combat kind of thing. But I'm also not a true Jedi because it's just too monk like for me. Being a gray Jedi allows me to basically balance the two. I can use dark side abilities, I can use light side abilities, and I can actually be where I'm needed instead of having the council dictate, oh, you have to go here, or being basically what amounts to is a slave. If you've played the MMO, then you know that the Inquisitor class, when you start out, you're just a slave, and then eventually you're just turned into basically just a weapon. I mean, that was the big thing back then, but that's fine. I can live with that. But being a Grey Jedi, it just gives me options.
Well, that is understandable. There is kind of a paradoxical nature, though, because for a lot of the people that have attempted to reach out Grey Jedi, there's kind of a problem where they run into where either they become apathetic, or more often than not, if they get overly involved, that actually does end up drawing them closer to the dark side. That was kind of, I mean, probably the most prominent Grey Jedi, or at least the most popular, that being Revan. Kind of the issue with him was that, he was willing to try to balance things out a bit, but the problem was is that every time he got involved in a conflict, it would draw him further and further to the dark side, because the dark side feeds on conflict. That's the big thing for it. So kind of the problem with that is that, the big thing, and this is kind of the paradoxical nature of the Grey Jedi, that it's almost inevitable that eventually one side of the Force is going to end up dominating your life eventually.
And that makes sense. But at least for the time, you can actually learn to balance the two. But if you end up going light side all the way, sometimes you'll basically, I mean, if you go dark side, you basically become a cold hearted person in some regards. And then, but if you go light side, you're kind of what's the word?
I mean, what are you trying to refer to?
Like they care about others, but at the same time they're kind of laid back. They don't see the big picture.
Detached? Detached?
Yeah, something like that.
I mean, a big, like, here's the thing. So, like, when kind of looking at the whole idea with the Jedi and the Sith conflict, it's kind of the issue of the Jedi don't. The thing with the Jedi mainly is that a lot of their light side purity is based on the fact that they never had to get involved in too many major conflicts. It was always a matter of just keeping the peace. Every time that a major war scale conflict arose, though, dark side of the Force would start, I guess you could say, poisoning them. And I think the reality is that that's kind of inevitable. That's why the one thing I do respect when looking at post Return of the Jedi is even Luke recognized this within his rebuilding of the Jedi Order and through the training of like Kyle Katarn, where even they kind of recognize that the dark side does kind of manifest a lot during these time frames. So at that point, they allowed themselves to touch the dark side so that they kind of the concept wasn't foreign to them. It wasn't like, oh no, I don't know what these feelings are. This whole thing. It's like they're like, instead they just figure out, that's kind of my dark side coming out. All right, I better like try to just relax a little, and that's kind of something I enjoyed about reading into Luke's Jedi Order and kind of how he operated in contrast to, I guess you could say, like the prequel era Jedi.
Yeah, that makes sense. And if I was a Grey Jedi, I'd probably be one of the bigger mavericks like Qui-Gon, because
I wouldn't really define Qui-Gon as a Grey Jedi, though.
But he is definitely a big maverick, though.
he is a maverick, but the thing is that Qui-Gon has no. The thing with Qui-Gon is that he's almost kind of a Jedi to the extremist end, because the whole thing is that, when you compare it to a lot of the other Jedi like Kenobi, Yoda, or any of them, their goals is like to become a companion to the Force, while with Qui-Gon, he literally wants to serve the Force. It's literally like he lets the Force in a way dictate his actions, and that's kind of, to a degree, that's actually part of the reason why he's hindered so much in combat. It's because he's just kind of going with the flow rather than actually kind of planning things for himself.
Yeah, and well, I like Liam Neeson as Qui-Gon anyway, so.
Well, no, I mean, don't get me wrong, he's a great character. I'm just saying it's kind of like I wouldn't really draw on Qui-Gon as an example, just because it's kind of like Qui-Gon's a lot more, especially when you look at the prequel era Jedi, where by then, because of the conflict surfacing and all that, and the Jedi kind of becoming, I guess you could say, either they were becoming too dictated by politics by then. So it's kind of like, by the time that happened, Qui-Gon kind of was the only one that actually went like, why are we getting involved in this stuff? It's like our job as Jedi is just to be peacekeepers. It's just to serve the Force. It's not, why are we getting involved in all this political drama? And so, I mean, you have a point when you kind of say about Qui-Gon being a maverick, but it's not in the same way that I guess you could say a Grey Jedi sees it. Because a Grey Jedi is a lot more just disillusioned with both the Order and the Force itself.
That makes sense. All right, let's go to the next question. Favorite worlds, or a world if you have a single one.
I kind of have two for this, because there's like a world that I'm most fascinated by, but then there's also a world where it's kind of like if I had to choose a world to live in. So that's kind of the contrast with that. So like Coruscant is my favorite world in terms of just fascination. Like, to me, having an entire planet that's basically one massive metropolis and like much of the planet's hollow because it's like multiple layers.
Yeah.
To me, that's just, I mean, there's a lot of potential with a world like that. There's a lot of stories that come out of that. And it's just fascinating to see. But if I were to say a world that I would want to live in, because the honest truth is I would not want to live on Coruscant, is probably Tatooine. Tatooine's a very beautiful planet where, it has a good sense of weather. It has nice flowing rivers, grasslands, and that sort of thing. And so it's kind of like, as weird as it is, it's almost kind of like the Thanos farm in a way, where it's just kind of like, it's just a very nice planet. And if I'm not mistaken, I think Tatooine also has some beaches or two, if I'm not mistaken. So it's kind of like, to me, that's kind of almost just the ideal planet to live in, especially when it's kind of detached from the rest of the galaxy to a degree, because it's like most of the major conflicts do not involve Tatooine. And literally the closest they got to that is like the rebels set up a base there for like a couple of years, and that was it. And even then, it's like as soon as the Empire got close to finding where it was, they just packed up and left. And this is covered in Battlefront Elite Squadron, as well as I think even A New Hope references it, because they say, we found a rebel base there, but it appears it's been abandoned for quite some time.
Yeah, that figures, because the minute they heard about Alderaan, they're figuring, well, Leia's probably gonna break under torture, and they have to bug out. And Yavin was just not only a good, it's a good backup base.
Well, actually, if I'm not mistaken, they already had Yavin by the time, even before the events of A New Hope, they already moved to Yavin. I mean, Tatooine was a lot more just early in the war,
Okay.
So it's kind of like, especially when you kind of think about, for a long time, the rebels weren't even that organized.
Yeah. Okay,
But yeah, if I define those are probably my top two.
Okay, so for me, it would probably be either Kashyyyk and Naboo. Because Kashyyyk Wookiees, and I love the jungle, and I love like the sense of living in like a treetop, because I've always been fascinated by that. Naboo, because it's got those rolling plains, it's got waterfalls, it's got a decent jungle, swampy area, so it's very balanced. So you can live pretty much anywhere on Naboo, and you don't have to worry about like too much. Living in the city is also great too. Like Theed is great. The only thing is, well, if you were living by the time of the Phantom Menace, you kind of would have to either bug out or you have to go into hiding because the droid army takes over.
I mean, I kind of forgot to mention Naboo, which is another really nice planet. Um, I would definitely say, especially after my experiences of Fallen Order, I mean, Kashyyyk's a fun planet, I guess you could say, but under no circumstance would anyone want to live there. Because I swear, you play that in Fallen Order, and literally everything on that planet wants to kill you. Literally everything.
Yeah, but it's a fascinating planet. I mean, they've got the big giant tree, and that was beautiful. Just climbing up that vine and just seeing the big rocher tree in the distance. That was great.
Wait, we're talking about the normal vines or the mutated vines that literally were trying to poison you?
The normal vines.
Yeah, I was about to say, like, that's the thing. It's kind of like Kashyyyk is a pretty planet, but it's kind of one of those things where it's like pretty the same way you go to like South America or something. It's nice, but literally everything there is trying to kill you.
Oh god, if they have giant snakes on Kashyyyk, I'm worried.
I mean, at this point, why would you be surprised? They literally have giant spiders there.
Oh god. Doesn't help my arachnophobia.
So, just saying. So, I
Alright.
guess let's move on to the next question.
Okay. Type of lightsaber color, and fighting style.
Ooh, um, I think I definitely would probably go for. Okay, so there's kind of two ways I have to answer this because it's like if I'm looking at it from an objective standpoint, paired lightsabers all the way. Because literally with that, you have every option available. There's literally no option not available. You can do single blade, dual blade, saber staff, combine them and only emit one. You get a light pike. And with that, you literally have access to every style possible, with the exception of the techniques used for the light whip. So other than that, you pretty much have everything available. So that's kind of my cheap answer, but pretending that that's out of the equation for a moment, I would definitely probably go with a curved lightsaber, and I would definitely go for a purple crystal. And then as far as my fighting style, I primarily enjoy the use of Makashi just because very elegant, very fluent, and doesn't require too much energy effort. I would back up this style though with Tajem So in order to compensate for Makashi's lack of kinetic momentum. And so that's kind of my idea for that.
Okay, so mine would actually be a saber staff with a slightly shortened hilt, and let me just hang on. Let me get my answer here.
Wait, like, are we going like XR Kun type?
Like, I'm thinking like you know how long the saber staff generally is? It's like what, a meter or something.
Yeah.
Well, I
Oh,
have it like maybe 0.90 instead of a full meter.
so you're almost trying to go with like how Savage uses his saber staff or something?
Well, I was thinking more along the lines of Darth Zana, actually.
Ah, not bad.
And what I would have is I could split them, and one would be a regular blade, and the other would be a Shoto. But I could configure it so that when I attach it, it goes back to a regular blade. And for me, I probably either do a white or a green, or like a lime green. And my fighting style would probably be it'd be a foundation in Gemso, backed up by Makashi and Surisu for obvious reasons, but I would use that as also my foundation to learn Vapad, not Juyo.
Even though you do realize within the context of the lore, Valpad's like almost impossible to fully master for most.
Yeah.
That's why Wendy was so skeptical of training people in it.
Yeah, but that we'll get to that when we get there. But I would want to learn Vapad not just for the physical technique, but also how to channel the dark side or channel darkness into kind of like a mental forge, as is described in the lore, so that not only can you, so like say a Sith Lord is shooting lightning at you, you can actually not, or he's pouring fury out, you can actually feed off of his dark side fury and his dark side aura, and that can basically keep you going until he eventually just burns himself out. It's basically what happened with Windu and Sidious as in the novelization.
Well, we'll get to that one because
Yeah.
oh my goodness, there's a lot to discuss with that fight.
Yeah, but it basically Windu was in control overall, but Sidious was basically just he wasn't really he was holding out until Anakin got there, and then he basically just threw the fight.
Well, the thing is people don't really understand this because the reason I kind of, this almost kind of requires its own subject because, especially recently, because I've been covering Antoine's video within Darth Vader versus Mace Windu, mainly just to further back my own studies. And so many people try to contest Antoine's conclusion based on the idea of just saying, oh, Windu beat Sidious, therefore he can beat Vader too. And I'm like, the circumstances are vastly different and the techniques are used as well. And people try to say the idea that Mace Windu's Vapad is like dark side kryptonite when it really isn't. Like, it's a really good technique, but the whole thing is that it specifically has to feed on the aggression of an opponent, the dark side fury, essentially, as mentioned. So when you take an opponent like Vader or Dooku, Vapad, as far as its effects, are borderline useless because the way Dooku and Vader fights, there's almost nothing for Vapad to feed on. And that's something that I've constantly brought up, where it's like, people try to overrate Vapad a lot. And like I said, don't get me wrong, it's a fantastic technique, but even that has its own shortcomings. And people really try to just ignore that. And then you have the whole thing with Windu beating Sidious, when people try to say, oh, Windu beat Sidious, therefore automatic victory for him against Vader, when it's like, no. Windu did not beat Sidious by being more powerful. He even admits this in the novel, where he downright states in the novel, with his Vapad usage versus Sidious's full range in the dark side, had they been fighting on even ground the whole time, the contest literally would have gone on forever. It literally would have had no conclusion. But the only reason Windu was able to win was because he basically lowered Palpatine to the window area, which basically was throwing him off balance. It was basically making it where Palpatine's maneuverability and a lot of his movement was being hampered. And so at that point, Windu could just leverage that advantage and just literally just disarm him. So, like, even if we regard the victory as legitimate, because many try to do that, especially with accounting for George Lucas's words, even with that, Windu didn't beat Palpatine by being more powerful. He won by outsmarting him. So, I don't know. I didn't mean to go too much on a tangent with that. It's just something that I felt needed to kind of be brought up.
Oh, that's okay. I mean, if I was going to study either Vapad or Juyo, I'd probably go for Juyo, because but I have to really like temper the aggressive part of it. Anyway, let's move on. Okay, favorite species or species if you have, or just one species if you have one.
Oof. Um, Zabraks are definitely up there. Um, yeah, I could definitely go with Zabraks. I've always been fascinated by the Chiss quite a bit.
Oh, oh, you mean like Admiral Thrawn?
Yeah, and then as far as like species just for being fun, Rancor. I swear to goodness, if I ever became a Jedi or Sith, I'm getting myself a pet Rancor. There is no if what says about it.
Actually, fun fact: the Rancor that's in Jabba's palace, it's actually a lot smaller than a regular Rancor, and the guy that takes care of it, his name is actually Malakili, and he lets the Rancor out occasionally, just to kind of run around the desert a little bit.
Well, yeah, I'm aware.
Yeah,
I'm aware of the relationship that occurred. That's why, and it's actually stated that at one point, I forget which, I think at one point the Rancor actually kind of saves the guy's life or something. And I think that's part of the reason why he cared so much about it.
it,
I forget the exact story, but it had something to do with saving one of their lives that kind of forged that bond.
and it was really sad to see that guy cry. I mean, it was. I mean,
And it's like losing your dog, except this dog, except, normally dogs don't eat um, people in a matter of 2 bites.
yeah. Uh,
But let's not pay attention to that.
Also, that poor slave girl.
I mean, to be fair, she was so ridiculously small. Honestly, she probably just died within the first bite.
Yeah, it's kind of like what is it? Sylvester and Tweety Bird. If I had to make a comparison.
I mean, I'm just saying, better get eaten by a rancor than a sarlacc.
Oh God. Anyway.
1,000 years of digestion ain't gonna be quick, boy.
Oh God. All right. So my favorite species would be Wookiees, Togrutans, and believe it or not, Mandalorians. I don't know if they count as a species, but I would.
That's a hard one because, I mean, it depends because even Mandalore as a homeworld, it's still just, it's a lot more of a society, but they're still human, I guess you could say. It's kind of like they're more of a race than a species in the sense that it's like it's a variant, because it's the same way you look at an American versus like a Russian. They're technically the same species, but or everything, same species and even to a degree the same race, but they've grown up in complete different areas, different cultures, and all of that, that it's kind of like isolated in a way.
Yeah. Wookiees obviously because well, walking carpet, and also the bowcaster is freaking awesome. Do I even need to talk about why the bowcaster is awesome?
I mean, if you need a full detail, you could just interview Kylo Ren about it.
Yeah. And Togrutans because, well, Togrutans are basically Twi'leks, but they're not like subjugated, and the females are not subjugated into like being objects of power like Twi'leks. And most of the best um, Togrutan characters in Star Wars are actually Jedi, like Shakti and Ahsoka Tano. So I like Togrutans, and not only that, but Shakti, she's a great character, and if you played the Force Unleashed, she is hard to beat.
I mean, the whole notion with I mean, she's hard to beat. I mean, especially when you look at Shakti throughout most of her stories, it's like she's always been amongst the highest tier, especially with her ability to just survive almost everything. I mean, for goodness sakes, this is like one of the only Jedi that has consistently survived engagements with Grievous.
Also,
And so,
oh, speaking of that, can we get a proper death for her, please? Like, she has like 3 different deaths. She's got the deleted scene in
No, Disney or just whoever do not want to give her a proper death. That will never happen.
like just talking about that for a second. She's got her death in the Revenge of the Sith film, which is the deleted scene, which kind of I don't know about that, but
There's two deaths in Revenge of the Sith. It's like first she gets killed by Grievous, and then she gets killed by Anakin.
it's like make up your mind, guys. And
I
then
mean, I think right now the new canon's leaning more towards the latter than the former. Well, it's already confirmed that the Grievous one is not canon in any form because of, it gets retconned. She's in the movie later on, so that's literally physically impossible.
yeah,
As for Anakin, it's kind of like I really hope Disney doesn't go down that route because it's kind of like I'm not gonna lie, I always found that death kind of bullshit. Like she just sits there in meditation, and Anakin just stabs her in the back. Like, really? Are you fucking serious with me? Am I being punked? Like, for her and as skilled as she is, she needs a lot more of a death with dignity than that. Like, that's the thing. None of her deaths have been fully good. Like, even the Force Unleashed, it's like you do a boss fight with her, and then she effectively just kills herself out of pity for Galen.
oh gosh,
It's like literally that is the full extent of it. It's like that's the thing. Shakti's a great character, but she cannot get a proper death scene to save her life.
I mean, if I'm being honest, like her Force Unleashed death is probably the more honorable because at least it's not complete utter BS.
Well, I mean, at least it's one that actually has an aid to the story, and it's not just throwing her character away. But again, it's kind of one of those things where it's just again, I still kind of deem it as bullshit only because it's like once again, she effectively just commits suicide out of pity when it's like she could have. I mean, people don't really get this. It's like literally Shakti just kind of reprimanding Merrick or just talking with him. It's just kind of a display that she actually really doesn't give a crap about dying from him.
yeah, and it doesn't help that her outfit kind of leaves little to the imagination. I don't know why she's.
I mean, in fairness, when you're on Felucia, your robes get torn pretty freaking quickly.
Oh god, the flesh-eating diseases, the Aclays. Oh god, playing the OG.
And you are aware that also Rancors.
Oh god, yeah. Playing
And
the
if I'm not mistaken, I think Felucia even has Sarlacc. Yeah, they have Sarlaccs.
yeah
So,
they have a Mega Sarlacc.
well, not just Mega Sarlaccs, but they have little ones too, like the ones on Bara.
Uh, the like playing the OG BF2 mission where you're on Felucia. Oh god, that is just that. If I had to compare that to anything, and I apologize, but that is basically the equivalent of Vietnam before Umbara came along.
I mean, I would argue in a way, Felucia is even worse than Umbara because the reason why Umbara was so bad, geographically, it actually wasn't that bad. Yeah, the Sarlacc pit sucked, but in the grand scheme of things, it was actually okay. It was just the tactics of the Umbarans that made it so hard. And of course, it didn't help that the general leading it was actually fucking sabotaging the entire army.
Yeah, that I didn't like Krell because he was just, I
No
didn't
one likes Krell. That's the idea.
I didn't
Literally, I swear, Krell's the one character where honestly, even if he wasn't a traitor, we would probably root for the clones during Order 66 on his ass.
yeah, I didn't know this until much later, but it's actually what's his name? Dogma?
Dogma.
Yeah, he actually takes was it Five's pistol and shoots Krell. Now that's payback.
I mean, yeah, that's pretty much the ending of that whole episode. I think we covered most of the whole relation with the species. You want to move on?
Let's move on. Okay. Let's see. Favorite land-based vehicle.
Um, ooh, damn, damn, motherfucker. Um, ugh, I don't. Oh gosh, probably. It's definitely going to be either Republic or Empire. It's definitely going to be one of those. And I'm kind of tied between two, but I have to narrow it down for one. Probably, I'm gonna go with like the ATST, just because, like, come on, it's giant, it's behemoth, it's like, and literally the way it walks and all that, it's kind of like it actually kind of has an intimidation, like, you know, especially like the Empire's, like, I swear, give the ATST a darker paint job, add like some color grading on it. I swear it looks scary as hell.
Oh, the chicken walker. Yeah, chicken walkers are very scary.
I mean, that's kind of, I liked its incorporation within Mandalorian a lot. And then a big thing I kind of tend to enjoy out of it is just the way it just overheads everyone. Like, as weird as it is, there's kind of a vibe I get with the ATST, and it's kind of like the ED 209 from Robocop in a way.
Oh yeah, that makes sense.
So, I just kind of like it for how imposing it is. And I know many people would say, well, then why not just choose the AT-AT? Because the AT-AT can't even shoot behind it.
Oh yeah,
So
and at least
that's like number one. And then if people wanted a number two, then ATTE all the way.
oh the camel. Hmm.
I mean, come on. It literally has turrets everywhere. Good luck trying to flank it.
Well, Luke managed to get underneath it, and actually,
That's the AT-AT.
yeah, and believe it or not, there's
I said the ATTE.
oh okay, oh yeah, okay, sorry. Yeah, I picked
Turtle.
the ATT too because it is a tough bitch. Like this thing went up against what three ATs. I mean, it didn't come away, but it put up a hell of a fight.
Well, this is kind of the contrast that kind of makes the interesting scenario between the Republic and the Empire, where it's like, even though the Empire technically does develop more powerful vehicles, it's like they're not practical at all. They're very, like, in a way, a lot of their vehicles are actually kind of mobile death traps.
Yeah, and if I had to pick a second one, I'd probably pick what is it the Juggernaut. Oh man, the Juggernaut is so cool.
I mean, I'll be fair, the Juggernaut is by far probably the Republic's most powerful vehicle, given its full capacity for destruction is actually borderline absurd. But
Yeah. Okay.
that's what late war Republic technology gets you.
Okay. Let's move on. Favorite ship or starfighter?
Ooh, um, dang. Uh, hmm. I'm gonna let you go first on this one because this is actually gonna take a while for me to think on.
Okay. So I'm tied between the X-wing and the Arc 170. I love the Arc 170 because it's the predecessor to the X-wing, but it's
Weren't they made by the same guys?
I don't know actually.
Like,
Incom.
isn't it the same Starfighter company?
Incom. Yeah, I believe so. I'm not entirely sure though. I have to look into that. But basically, X-wings, they're just iconic, and I really like how like they can be like modded, and the Arc 170 has not one, not two, but three people can be put into the cockpit. So you have a tail gunner, and you have your two pilots up front, or you can just do one pilot. I'm also a big fan of the Y wing. I don't know why, but the Y wing is it's just great. It's a great bomber.
So I kind of just thought about it. So the way I have to look at it, so you're saying like ship, are we to define this as almost exclusively fighters or bombers, or are we also to include like full-on cruisers?
It doesn't matter.
Um, I guess in that case, as weird as it, okay, so like this is kind of where I actually lean towards, as weird as it is, I actually like separatist ships a lot for some reason. So for me, it's kind of like, combatively, I would love something like maybe the TIE Defender, perhaps.
Ooh, that's a good choice actually. I like the Titan
Um,
Defender.
like the TIE Defender's up there. Another, but for something just to fly around in, definitely Dooku's ship.
The Solar Sailor. That's kind of
Yeah. I
that's
mean, come on. If you're gonna fly around the galaxy, you might as well do it with some style.
yeah, that makes sense. It's
And then you get to the bigger ships, and I actually really like the Malevolence.
oh yeah. I mean, granted, it does have its big. It does have its flaws though.
Well, every ship is flawed. That's kind of the whole thing. But I just enjoy the nature of the Malevolence. It's just, to me, it's like you have a ship that is equipped with full ion weapon, which is kind of its prototype. It's kind of, in a way, it's kind of almost a prototype full on ion weapon. Like there were ion cannons before then, but they were kind of more, they were never utilized in such a large scale to the degree that the CIS used for the Malevolence, which arguably kind of helped set the foundation for later Imperial technology within that, especially when you account for ships like the Eclipse.
Oh god, the
So,
Eclipse. Oh man, you play.
or as I like to call it, the most broken Star Wars ship in history.
Oh, that is just evil if you're playing Empire at War. Oh my god, when you take control of that thing, you're evil. Like you could blow up ships on a whim. It's funny as hell.
Well, again, the Eclipse effectively is a mini Death Star. So you have that, and so I kind of think about that. But again, I don't. The thing is that I'm not going to automatically just choose ships that are the most powerful one because that's uninteresting, but also because I try to have fun with stuff. So so probably I definitely those are kind of my top three picks, like the Defender, Dooku's, what's it called again?
Solar Sailor.
Solar, Solar Sailor. Gosh, that's weird. And then the Malevolence, especially since I also kind of like how the Malevolence has like a railway system inside of it.
Like seriously, what was up with that? Did they really need a railway system inside this ship?
I mean, the ship was ridiculously big, so it's kind of like it's actually kind of good to have.
Yeah, and if I had to pick another one, I'd probably pick um, Grievous's personal little starfighter that he uses.
Yeah, his Starfighter is definitely up there. It's definitely,
Yeah,
definitely roomy, I guess you could say.
yeah. There's a lot. There's yeah. It's unique in that it actually has hull. Its hull is actually like much stronger than a standard starfighter, which is kind of interesting. I also really like Asajj Ventress's little what is it? It's
I know the one you're talking about.
yeah. That's pretty cool too. I mean, a lot of stuff from the Micro series is pretty cool too. So there's that. Anyway, okay. Next question. Okay. Favorite unique or one of a kind ship?
Okay, I definitely got a pick for this one. Um, the stealth ship from Clone Wars Season 2,
Ooh,
the one utilized against Admiral Trench.
ooh, ooh.
Literally a Star Wars submarine with full on sensors, full cloaking technology, and tracking torpedoes,
Hmm.
tracking missiles. Like
Yeah.
that to me, conceptually, is a really well designed ship. And frankly, I'm surprised that it didn't get utilized more. Like, especially even after the Republic fell, you would almost think like a group like the Rebels would utilize a ship like that because
Yeah.
it's really good. I mean, granted, maybe the Empire might be better at tracking stealth ships, given that, the Empire and even before then, the Republic was more technologically advanced than the CIS, but still, it's just kind of like it's a very fascinating ship to me that I'm kind of disappointed didn't get utilized more.
Look, okay, so mine would probably have to be Maul's personal ship, the Scimitar. This thing is just, oh, it is so cool. And it actually, a fun fact, it actually has a little speeder that he uses, and it has a specific brake system. So when he jumps off or he falls unconscious, it it slows down so he doesn't crash. And it's just a great ship, and it makes sense for a Sith assassin to have something like that.
Well, I mean, especially when you consider the ship has cloaking technology as well.
It's more actually sensor scrambling technology. It can't actually go invisible.
I know, but still.
Yeah, it's a great ship. Okay, so next question. If you were a Jedi, nope, sorry, hold on. Favorite popular or well-known ship?
You have a lot of ship questions, no offense. Um, okay. Um, I mean, the Solar Sailors kind of counts as that. But if we were to take that out of the equation, since I used it for a previous, um, would the Rogue Shadow count?
Yeah, that counts.
Probably that then, because I like the Rogue Shadow's design a lot.
For me, it's the Falcon all the way. The Falcon is just, it's a beautiful hunk of junk, and it survived 2 wars, and I'm really glad it didn't get blown up.
That ship's never gonna get blown up. Let's be for real. That ship will get decommissioned before it blows up.
Well, let's just hope it doesn't go the way of the Enterprise D.
Yeah, I'll agree with that one.
Yeah. Well, I would actually like to see Chewie say, "Oh shit," just before the ship crashes. Oh yeah, I have a joke for that. When the Falcon is on Starkiller base, and they just basically they don't land, they crash land, and then when they finally stop, I can't stop myself from yelling touchdown.
I mean, I wouldn't see it as the touchdown. It's more of like that game that you play where you slide the shuffleboards or something.
Oh, okay. Still, it's a great. I mean,
I get the idea though.
yeah, it's a good joke, but yeah,
All right,
that makes sense.
ready for the next one?
Okay, so if you were a Jedi, which master would you want?
I have a very, very straightforward answer for this one. Plo Koon.
Oh,
All the way. Plo Koon's technique is really good. It fits with kind of the style that I would want to emulate. And I also like his teaching methods because the thing with Plo Koon that kind of separates him from a lot of other Jedi for me is that he didn't, at least not to the same extent, he didn't detach himself. He was kind of like, he almost acted as kind of like a grandfather figure to a degree.
yeah,
And it's kind of like, to me, it's that kind of wisdom that I can enjoy learning by because he's stern when he needs to be, but he doesn't purposely act like an asshole. He literally is one of those people where it's kind of like, as weird as it is, I think of a comparison like a Karate Kid, and he's almost like a Mr. Miyagi of the Jedi.
that actually is a pretty good comparison, believe it or not, because I just recently watched The Karate Kid, so.
So it's kind of like that. And again, I love his technique. I love his stern, and he's highly skilled. And I also just love how bloody persistent he is. Like, this is a guy who literally took on and defeated Ventress with a broken arm.
Yeah, that's badass, and also because he has electric judgment.
Yeah, which of course, that's a nice bonus. And again, so for me, he just kind of aligns with everything I expect because he kind of represents what I think Jedi should behave. Because he's very stern. He's very, I guess you could say he's no nonsense, but he's not, he doesn't detach himself. He is one of those people that I could see if, because he did so with like Ahsoka a lot, where whenever Ahsoka got very worried or very anxiety, he would kind of just sit down and talk with her to a degree and just kind of have a master student type talk where it wasn't, he was just trying to be very compassionate. And you can even see this within the argumentation with Jensaarai, Evan Nova, and Ready 4, where they downright say they like Ahsoka as a character, but they think their biggest mistake with her was making her Anakin's apprentice. And in their minds, they think she should have been Plo Koon's apprentice.
Yeah, wasn't it Plo Koon that found her and found her to be Force sensitive? And that's...
Well, yeah, and originally, before Clone Wars got canceled back in the day, they were going to do a story about where Plo Koon did find her.
Wasn't
and it was going to be about basically like a forced trafficker was going to try to like abduct her.
Oh, wasn't there
also...
also...
no, it wasn't like sex trade. It was just people that wanted force wielders.
Oh, okay. What?
So I don't really know who. Like, I guess in fairness, when you have force sensitives, it's kind of like you almost do think of a scenario where they would kidnap a force sensitive children, raise them to use the force just so they can become an enforcer for a mob or something.
Yeah, that's pretty messed up. Wasn't there also in season 6, Plo Koon was on an expedition and he found Sifo Dyas's lightsaber?
Kind of. I don't get into that honestly because season 6 has so many fucking retcons that it's hard to like take it seriously in a way when putting it in the context of the overall EU because on one hand it's like, oh, he found it, but the comics also state that Grievous's first lightsaber was gifted to him by Dooku, and Dooku stated it to be Sifo Dyas's lightsaber. That it was his very first lightsaber as a gift from Dooku. And so, to a degree that kind of gets retconned. And so, it's kind of like, that's the thing. I try not to get into season 6 too much just because there's so many things that I have to like break down with that season. Like it's overall, like, I mean, it's all right as a season. It's just, there's a lot of holes in it.
Yeah. We should definitely do a podcast where we go through each of the seasons to talk about our favorite and least favorite episodes.
I mean, I don't really view the Clone Wars with individual episodes, though. That's kind of the problem. For me, it's a lot more of just centering the arcs one step at a time. So, because there are some arcs I love, and then there were some where I'm like, holy fucking shit, what were they thinking?
Yeah. Okay, so for me, I would probably either take, I would want Windu or Luke as my master. To my knowledge, I don't know if Windu actually he ever took a student. Oh, okay. I thought, yeah, I didn't know if he took a student. So I would want him probably as my teacher, or Luke, just because, well, Luke.
I mean, Luke is kind of, no offense, it's like Luke's kind of like the obvious choice to a degree. It's kind of like, again, that's why I try to put a little more thought into there because there's a lot of answers to these questions where you can just do a no shit Sherlock. It's kind of like, it's like someone saying, "Oh, what lightsaber would you want?" It's like I even kind of covered that. It's like, my cheap answer would be paired lightsabers because they can literally do everything. But I try not to answer with stuff like that because, there's not really anything interesting behind that, It's kind of like, I mean, why would people want Luke as a master? Because Luke is literally like God tier as a Jedi. It's like, who wouldn't want him?
Yeah. Okay.
Like, I don't know a single being who wouldn't want Luke as a Jedi teacher, especially Legends Luke.
Okay. If you were a Sith master or a Sith, who would you want as your master?
Oh God. Um, ooh, I have. I guess I could say I do have a couple of choices, but I'm trying to narrow it down. I think the big thing for me is that when you have a Sith teacher, you have to have one that kind of actually, in a way, respects you. And that's kind of a big problem because there's a lot of Sith lords that have it where when they have an apprentice, they either want to turn them into just a carbon copy of themselves or into just a mindless tool to be used and discarded. Um, so, it's for that reason why you would never want someone like Palpatine
Oh God, no.
because Palpatine's just going to use you for all you're worth and then just discard you. Which, to a degree, all the Sith do that, but it's like Palpatine's really bad at it because for him, he doesn't really even see it as a loss, you know?
Like
So,
in the dark side version of ending of the Force Unleashed, he says, what was the line?
well, then, he downright says it to Galen Merrick, like, and then, like Vader, you will be cast aside, finish him. Like, he even downright admits that he's going to one day get rid of him.
Yeah.
And so it's like, really? So, yeah, you know, you don't want anyone like that. And so you kind of have that problem. Vader, Vader's one of those people where it's like, he's kind of the same issue to a lesser extent. Like, Vader's not the type of person to completely discard you for no reason, but he does just kind of see you as a tool to an extent. Um, Especially with the abuse that he does. So the way you have to kind of look at it is that the lifestyle of a Sith, regardless of who you choose, is going to be hard, no matter what. So breaking it down, I'm kind of down to two. I'm thinking either someone like Revan or Plagueis, because the thing that the two of, or even Darth Treya, because the thing that all three of them have in common is that they encourage individual thought and actually kind of support the idea of Sith kind of growing out of just being these tools or these loyal servants and actually encourages individual thinking. But in terms of the benefits, and this is kind of where I have to agree with Jensaarai, in terms of the benefits that you can get, Plagueis, because I mean, literally, once when your training's done, this guy will effectively make you immortal. Effectively. It's like, I could stand continuing to have Plagueis around if it meant living forever. You know? Especially when it's like, Plagueis in a way was actually kind of more humble. As weird as that is. Like think about it. It's like, Plagueis could have tried to elevate himself as emperor, and he never did. He downright just said that, in the original plan, Palpatine was meant to become that. And then Plagueis was just kind of, once when the Empire was established, Plagueis would just take the time to research how to become immortal. That was literally his entire thing. He just wanted the Sith in power. He really didn't care about himself ruling it.
That's
And
that's,
so,
that's kind of ironic, actually. For me, I'd probably take either Revan or Dooku, actually.
Dooku wouldn't be a bad one, assuming he wasn't under the okay, this is the problem. Dooku wouldn't be bad in his own merits. The problem is when you put him in the context of being under the leash of Sidious. That's when it becomes a problem. Because the thing is that not only is Dooku limited to how much he can train you, given Sidious, but on top of that, Dooku's actions often don't make sense because it's just to further advance Palpatine's agenda. Like, take when he discards Ventress in season 3 of Clone Wars. He had no reason to do it. He literally had no physical reason to do it. It's just Palpatine was just being a real jackass and just saying, you're either loyal to me, it's like those bitchy girls, the one where it's like, if you love me, then you'll do it. That sort of thing. It's like, that's literally Palpatine and Dooku. Oh, if you're still loyal to me, you're going to kill her. And Dooku's like, well, that doesn't make any sense. She's like a good asset. And she's like, I don't care. Kill her.
Yeah.
So to me, that's kind of the problem. Dooku's not that bad in his own merits. It's when you put him in the confines of Sidious that he kind of quickly falls apart.
Yeah. All right.
Especially since if Sidious orders him to do it, he will get rid of you.
Yeah. All right. Let's move on. Okay. If you were a Jedi Master, what will you? Who would you want as your apprentice?
Oh, this is actually a completely new one. Um. Oof. 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 So let's think. I got Troll Obi-Wan. I got Sociopath Anakin. I got. Ooh, dang. That's a tough one. That's a tough one because I mean it kind of depends because the thing you have to look at is you don't want to just choose any character because it has to kind of complement what you're teaching them. You know, so damn. And the problem is that a lot of these characters are established because of the way they do have certain masters. So it's kind of like you're almost writing a different character when you take someone in. So I don't know. That's a hard one for me. But I guess again, if someone's to twist my arm until I make a decision, okay, I'm gonna have to come back to this one. This is like actually thought provoking. I gotta kind of really think this one through.
Okay, so my pick, I would probably take Cal Kestis, like after his master's death, like, and I would pick.
God, I hate you sometimes.
Yeah, I'd pick up where, what was his name again?
DePaul.
Yeah, I would pick up right where he left off, and basically, I would kind of encourage Cal to basically, like, learn everything he can, and basically, I'd train him the way I would train pretty much any student if I was a sensei. I'd teach him.
Well, that's kind of the thing. This question's a lot more of what would you do if you were a Jedi Master training an apprentice? Because to me, it's kind of like the individual you're training is kind of irrelevant to the context of the question. Because I could answer the former a lot, I could answer how I would train someone a lot easier than who I would train.
Actually, I do have that question here, believe it or not. If
I mean, we should probably just get to that because in the grand context, who we train is kind of irrelevant. It's kind of like, because again, even if you get a certain character, you're going to mold them the way you want them to be, which is different from how a different Jedi trained them. Like, for example, think of someone like Anakin. Imagine if it was like you or me training him instead of Obi-Wan. He would mold into a completely different individual.
Yeah.
This is actually why so many people do what ifs of what if Yoda trained Anakin? What if Mace trained Anakin? Or what if Qui-Gon trained Anakin? Because all of them would mold him to be a completely different person. So then in the context, who you train kind of becomes irrelevant.
Yeah. All right, so we'll transition to that one. So if you were a Jedi Master, what would you teach to your apprentice?
I kind of have two ways of looking at it. Combat preparation and definitely I think so there's two ways I want to have it looked. So one is the big thing I would want to train them is to be mentally prepared. So the big thing for me is I would want them to be strategically thoughtful. So main thing is that when they're using the Force, really think through what you're using it for. What is the practical purpose in using it? Because the thing is that when you're drawing them the Force, it's not a power. It's an energy field that is flowing through you. It is something that the Force grants you your power. It is not your power. So the thing is that when you're drawing on it, it better be for a good reason because you're essentially asking the Force to help you effectively.
Yeah.
So the way I would see it is that I want them to be martially good, and I want to train them to be able to overcome a lot of odds. So I do a lot of sparring matches with them and that sort of thing, so that they have that strategic mindset on how to deal with opponents. That even if the odds are stacked against them, they can think their way out of it. And that's a big thing for me. The second thing I would train them is kind of just being down to earth. Don't detach yourself from the people you're protecting. Try to understand them, try to talk with them, have a grasp on what you're fighting for. Because again, if you're going to protect these people, you have to understand them. You have to understand what they want, what their goals are, what their needs are, and that's a big thing. And so what you create when you factor all this together is just someone that, basically I would want to train a Jedi to basically just be able, if needed, sit down and just talk with someone who's going through a lot of crap or something.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right, so for me, I would probably the same thing, except I would want them to learn both the dangers of the dark side, but also how the dark side is not necessarily bad. It's just a natural opposition to the light. And sometimes you need to go into the dark in order to protect the light. Basically, I would want them to be a Jedi Sentinel in more ways than one.
I don't know if I would refer to Sentinel for this one though, because Sentinels don't really tap into the dark. They're actually more of kind of like an Inquisitor type force, if anything. I mean, if you're going to look more into that, you should probably look more into like the Jedi philosophers who, a lot of them ended up tapping into the dark just to try to familiarize, which I agree with. That's kind of a big thing, is that you should have, when you're training your apprentice, have them tap into the dark once or twice so at least they understand and are familiar with it. So that way, if they're in a fight and they're like giving in to their anger and their hatred, they can quickly recognize what's going on and they're not losing themselves. That's the thing. They have to know what it's like to use the dark side. They have to experience that so that if it does happen to them, they can correct it accordingly and not lose themselves. So that's a big thing.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Next question. Um, which era would you want to live in, and what would you be in that era?
Oh, oh, New Republic, probably within the confines of Legends, with the New Republic and the Imperial Remnant, and then maybe just kind of depends if I'm force sensitive or not. I mean, probably a big thing is just pursuing a political career. Probably, I'm a big thing with that. So, try to get into politics either for the New Republic or the Imperial Remnant, which by this point, both factions become pretty reasonable by then. And by Imperial Remnant, I'm referring to like the one under Palion, not the one where because so after the truce between the New Republic and the Imperial Remnant, because by then it's kind of like both factions become pretty reasonable by then. And so you can actually do a lot of work for them. So it's kind of like, either do mercenary work or anything along those lines. So probably a big thing would just be getting into politics in one of those and trying to operate a sector, maybe start up a mercenary group and protect people in exchange for credits. Be like, hey, like if a farm's getting raided by pirates or something, I tell them, hey, if you pay us some credits, we'll keep you safe.
Oh, okay. All right. So for me, I'd probably take the Old Republic during the Great Galactic War, and during the the Cold War era that happened after the Treaty of Coruscant, because there's a lot of things that the Jedi were able to learn and also do. Like they had diplomacy, they had their combat training, and they had like when the war resumed, they were still able to fight Sith, but You also had your philosophers, you had your scholars, you had your sages, and it's a great era. I mean, the MMO is probably considered one of the. It has like the best, like it showcases the era very well, and not to mention the companions are really well written. So
Well, once again, this is kind of like the difference between kind of an era where you would physically want to live in versus one of immersing in Star Wars, because that's the thing. It's like that era is great, but you also have a high chance of dying. And that's kind of a big thing because there are literally stuff everywhere. So it's kind of like, it's kind of just how you look at it. But I mean, so for example, the reason why I kind of enjoyed the idea of the New Republic and the Imperial Remnant a lot is because by then as well, the Jedi and the Sith have kind of in a way, I mean, not so much for the Jedi, but the older Jedi, because Luke's generation of Jedi is very different. And so a lot of the older ways have kind of been forgotten by this point. And so for me, it's kind of fascinating where since the Imperial Remnant and the New Republic really don't, they're not that overbearing. So you can kind of just, in a way, you could almost just become an archaeologist in a way for the Force and just collect Force artifacts, which to me, that'd be a really good job to do in that era. It's kind of like just start up a mercenary group, and then a hobby of ours is like just spending credits on getting Force artifacts and just keeping them cataloged.
That's actually kind of interesting, and that transitions to the next question: which era would you not want to live in?
um uh Definitely not Clone Wars, because let's just say every planet you're on is going to get ravaged pretty much immediately. So probably not. Like, that's the thing. Like, people kind of examine the Clone Wars and say, "Oh, this is such a great era," and yeah, it's a great era to watch and read into, but you would not want to live in it. It's a really terrible time frame. I mean, which is kind of part of the point. Like, why do you think people allowed Palpatine to take power? It was because at that point they were just fed up. They were tired of the war. They were tired of their homes getting raided. And so at this point, when Palpatine comes in and says, "Hey, we're going to make a massive empire and we'll keep you all safe," they're like, "Yeah, sure, go for it." And so, as much as in a twisted way, the empire during this era was kind of a blessing in a way. As much as people hate to admit that, it's kind of the truth. Because at least during the earlier years, because that's the thing as well. Really, when you think about it, the Empire during its early years really was not much different than the Republic during the last year of the Clone Wars. Like, the only difference is that Palpatine leads for life. That's literally the only difference. By then, they already had a lot of the militaristic elements, and for the early days of the Empire, the Imperial Senate still had a decent amount of influence. I mean, there was a lot of things that the Empire couldn't do at the time because the Imperial Senate could still tell them, no way. And yeah, Palpatine would still find ways to get around it, but at least there was kind of still a check and balance with power.
Yeah. Okay. For me, it'd probably be the period of KOTOR 2 because I do not like Atris. I'm sorry, but the fact that if I was actually like the Jedi Exile, I would want to kill her and take back my lightsaber because just because I followed Revenant to war does not mean that I fell to the dark side. I was just doing what I thought was right, and you guys are idiots, and maybe, just maybe, for once, you guys are wrong. So, and the fact that I had to give up my lightsaber, which is stupid because each lightsaber is a personal possession, even though possession is technically
For the lightsaber is considered an extension of yourself.
yeah. So having to give it up, and then Atris, when you meet her later, she practically brandishes your lightsaber as a trophy in some regard.
This lightsaber will make a fine addition to my collection.
Oh god. and the fact that she has like Sith, like a whole library of Sith holocrons. It's like, how is she? How have you not picked up on the fact that she's clearly fallen? It was just pushing her just a little bit into the deep end without a life jacket, and she fell. And it was like I would not want to live in that era, and also because, well, the Sith were basically hunting down the Jedi, and you've got like Sith like Sion and Nihilus, and they're basically like they're just like, what is it, abominations of the Force, and you would
I
not.
mean, Nihilus is literally considered his own dark side nexus.
Yeah, it just it I I would not want to live in that era, because if I was a Jedi, I'd be hunted down to no end, and but if I was like a mercenary or something, it'd be great actually. I could get a lot of work. I might be able to, become a bounty hunter or something.
Yeah, but in fairness, just about every era works for bounty hunters for the most part, because it's like no matter what stage the galaxy's in, there's always a need for that profession.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those necessary evils. It's only when a bounty hunter comes crosses paths with a Jedi and he's interfering with a Jedi's work that it becomes a problem.
Yeah, pretty much. So I think we have most of that covered.
Uh,
What's the next question?
okay, next question. Um, Favorite Lightsaber?
Oh, like as a character?
Yeah, like as a lightsaber character.
Um, Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Dang it, you took my answer.
Well, I'm just saying, like that's an obvious, like that's a big pick because Kenobi, he has a very complete arc from the beginning to the end of his life. He has a very full-fledged arc that works well, and he's lost just about everyone. He lost his essentially his father, because Qui-Gon was essentially his surrogate father. He lost his surrogate mother. He lost his surrogate brother, who freaking fell to the dark side. He lost both of his loves of his life, because he actually had two of them, and his entire organization fell, and he had to go into hiding for 20 plus years.
Yeah. Uh, well, I like the fact that he actually has a love interest, and had Satine actually said the word, he would have left the Jedi Order for her. And it's just having Obi-Wan of all people basically become like this, what, like this teenager, this awkward teenager in Ank's character in front of Satine. It's actually kind of interesting to watch.
Well, because the Jedi are literally illiterate to love language. They're literally. That's the thing. People give Anakin a lot of crap with Attack of the Clones for the awkward things he says to Padme, and it's like, yeah, it is awkward. I will give you that, but it's kind of it's almost intentional, because it's like the whole thing is that literally he's a Jedi and he has no knowledge of how to flirt with a girl. He has no idea. He wasn't raised like a normal person would. He was raised by monks. And so...
And then he turned into a psychopath, so... Wow.
Pretty much.
Oh,
pretty much. So, like, for him, that's kind of a big thing. And even Kenobi kind of shares that within his interactions with Satine, where it's kind of like, he doesn't really know how to approach it. And
the sarcasm of a soldier and the delusion of a dreamer.
I mean, pretty much. And then you account for that.
Also, Maul killed Satine, so he has a pretty good reason for wanting to go after Maul. But he chooses not to.
Well, I mean, this is the thing, is that Obi-Wan has very similar circumstances to Anakin, but he has the self-discipline not to cross that line. That's the big thing that makes his character interesting. It's like, especially with his dynamic with Anakin, because it's like Anakin crossed that line. It's like for Obi-Wan, his love for Satine he never let it override his commitment to the Order. He was like, yeah, those feelings were there, and he even admitted that. But but it's kind of like what he mentions Anakin in season 6, I think, season 5 or season 6, where when he talks to Anakin about Padme during the whole Clovis situation, Obi-Wan downright says, Anakin, I'm not ignorant to what's going on. It's like,
Season
you know,
7 being ironic.
it's not bad, it's natural, but you just have to understand what you're committed to. And Obi-Wan even downright says in Revenge of the Sith novelization that he knew. Because there's a scene in the Revenge of the Sith novel where Obi-Wan talks to Padme about Anakin and how his mental health is doing and all that. Because, at this time, Anakin's kind of pissed off with the whole spying on the Chancellor thing.
I have seen a recording of him killing
Oh,
younglings.
well, no, it's not that one. It's earlier in the movie.
Oh, okay.
So it's earlier in the story where, Anakin's pissed about spying on the Chancellor for obvious reasons. And so Obi-Wan's talking to Padme, and, Padme, I think at some point during this scene, Padme ends up asking him, like, why he came to her about it. And Obi-Wan downright pretty much drops the bomb and says, Padme, I'm aware of what's going on. Like I know how you look at him the same way he looks at you and all that sort of stuff. And this is further implemented in the comics because, like, at one point, Obi-Wan actually downright went to Anakin's vacation home or something, or when Anakin was on vacation and he was at Padme's vacation home with her.
Oh my gosh.
And so by this point, Obi-Wan downright says, I know what's going on, and and he says, Anakin and I pretend that I don't know. And I was fine with that because it made him happy. And I wanted him to be happy. And so that's kind of what was interesting about his character, is that despite him not crossing that line, he was actually, in a way, understanding of why Anakin did. And he was actually willing to protect him for it. He basically downright said that he wasn't going to tell the council about it.
Still, it would have been interesting if Palpatine hadn't gotten in power and Padme had given birth and the council had found out. Would they have trained Luke and Leia? Or
it's possible, and that's kind of the sad reality, is that the ticking time bomb was always there, and it's kind of it's unknown what they would have done with Anakin at that point, because it's kind of like,
wasn't Ki-Adi-Mundi, wasn't he also allowed to get married because he was trying to preserve his species or something?
Well, that's the thing. He never got married. He just kind of banged a lot of people.
Oh God. Oh, the literal dickhead.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay. All right.
But here's the thing. When you actually look at the source of the Jedi Code, it actually never full on states that you're not allowed to get married, because the whole idea is that you're allowed to love people. You just can't get attached to them. You can't get to the point where your judgment is being clouded because of that. And that's kind of the problem when you compare the whole idea. That's the thing with Obi-Wan and Satine. They loved each other, but he never let it cloud his judgment. Even when Maul killed her, Obi-Wan had it in himself not to give in to his hatred. Because he was like, no. It's like, even disregarding my commitment to the Order, Satine wouldn't have wanted this out of me. And that was a big thing. So, that's kind of where that goes, I guess you could say. But overall, yeah, Kenobi's definitely probably up there as, in my opinion, probably the best character of the saga.
Yeah,
overall.
he's a great character, and apparently there's a new TV series that's coming out soon.
Yeah, and I'm aware of that, and I'm actually looking forward to seeing how that goes.
My gosh, I am so excited too. All right, favorite Darksider.
Ooh. Drawing on the I've always been a Darth Vader fanboy. That's never gone away. But again, it's kind of like, that's an obvious answer, so I'm trying to do something a bit more different, I guess you could say.
I like
So,
Bane. Bane was a pretty good character.
Bane was a really good character, and I'll give him credit for that. For me though, um, ironically, let's think. I'm trying to think of. I'm kind of like down to two. Honestly, I probably think Darth Crate. I really like
Oh yeah, I forgot about him. I like him too.
because Darth Crate is kind of like one of aside from Vader, it's like he's a very tragic character in the sense of that he's survived through everything. And that's a big thing for him is that he's survived through all of it and he kind of has no place left. And that's kind of the big thing for him. It's kind of like he kind of has a similar conflict to what Maul had, except even worse, because at least for Maul, it's kind of like for Maul, at least the things that betrayed him and all that was kind of like he was able to kind of just for Maul, at least it was kind of in a way just down to the personal, while for Crate, his entire life purpose was taken away from him,
yeah.
especially with its relation to the Jedi. So, and I'm fascinated by his whole running of the Sith and his effort to cure himself and all that sort of stuff. And it makes a very complete story with him that I overall it makes him a great character. It also helps that he is arguably the second most powerful Sith Lord in galactic history.
Oh my god, this guy is basically he is like he's 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 on Palpatine's level.
Well, he's close to it because even though he's not as powerful as Palpatine, he's more skillful and viable. That's why a lot of people, myself included, actually downright say that Crate could probably beat Palpatine. Just because even though Palpatine's more powerful, Crate has a lot of advantages. Um, like the way I see it, Crate is essentially the Thanos of the Star Wars universe.
Oh god, give him the Infinity Gauntlet. Good god.
Well, essentially, because the thing with Crate is that his entire philosophy is I'm not going to let the galaxy dictate who I am. I will bend it to my will, and I will essentially rule over this stuff. Not because I'm a greedy, power hungry lunatic, but because I want to simply say to myself that I can.
Yeah, that's actually
That's why Crate is the literal embodiment for the Sith as lawful evil. He is lawful evil. His desire is not greed or to himself. It's just to control and dominate. That is his entire purpose.
that's kind of noble in a really fucked up way, but
Well, the thing with Crate is that he's very centric to who he is. His convictions are very strong. Palpatine's the type of guy who would kill his own grandmother if it meant staying on a throne for a second longer.
didn't he killed his own family when he was a teenager?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Crate's the type of person who, even if you threw him down a Dark Knight Rises pit, he would still find a way to climb back out and come back.
This has cost you your strength. Victory has defeated you.
What piece exists for Crate? What piece?
just, oh my god.
So yeah, definitely as far as like my favorite Darksider goes, I mean, like I said, Vader's an obvious one, but Crate's up
Yeah,
there.
I
Just because I am fascinated by his philosophy and his overall persistence.
yeah. Okay, so next question. If you were a Sith, what would your Darth name be?
Um, okay. Darth Monarch. And the reason I go for that is that I am a man of royalty. I am a man of having a high sense of meritocracy. So here's the thing: as a monarch, is that I treat myself as a king, not as just a pure dictator, but as a literal royalty to whoever is going to be my successor will earn it. They will climb every inch to reach where I am. And I will have that out of any Sith that I take in as an apprentice. I will treat them to be themselves. I will train them to be the best versions of themselves, but they will not overthrow me without gaining every inch. They will not. And I will downright tell them that. And I will make it clear to them with anything. And that kind of applies with my rule if I ruled an empire. I encourage individual thought. I encourage the idea of people you really coming out and being themselves and having the best strengths that they can. But it's one of those things that if they do that, in the process of doing that, they have to understand that my firm grip is absolute. I won't dictate too many things, but the few things I do dictate, you better follow them to the letter. Because if you don't, I won't be kind. It's one of those things where my goal when defeating an opponent is not just to beat them, but to make them admit that they are defeated, to make them admit that they've lost, to literally crush their sensation of being able to fight back.
So you basically be the embodiment of Dunmok.
Well, psychological warfare, yeah, basically. Because to me, it's the whole thing is that if you can get an enemy to beat you, if you can get an enemy to admit that you have beaten them, that is more value than even killing them. It's more value because now you're gonna be able to look them in the eye every day, and they can know that.
That's big.
That's why, honestly, to me, a punishment worse than death is keeping them alive, knowing that they have been beaten and that they failed.
That's actually quite profound. So my Darth name would actually be Darth Axius, and I chose it because, well, axe, obviously, but I would want and if I was ruling an empire or even just taking over the galaxy, I would, if I see something that is not useful to the benefit of the empire, I would cut it away like an axe. And if someone screws up too many times, well, they're gone. It's kind of basically Darth Vader's philosophy. If you screw up too many times, you have failed me for the last time, and then I force choke you, and then you're dead. But if you fail, but it's not your fault, I would say learn from this, and hopefully it won't happen again. But if it does happen again, and it is your fault, I'll blame you, but you won't. But I'll make sure you learn. But if it's your fault again, then that's it. You're done. Basically, it's kind of like the 3 strikes rule. But I would also want my successor to learn the value of seeing the worth of my subjects. Like, if I see like a farmer who's producing a certain amount of crops and they give, like, say 30% of the crops to the empire, I would want to keep them around, but I wouldn't want to subjugate them or like put them through hard labor, or basically what Palpatine did. Because
I mean, the problem with Palpatine is that he's literally just a sadist. For him, it's not even. He does a lot of things even when it's not needed. Like, again, that's kind of like when you compare Palpatine to someone like. Again, I kind of make the comparison between Palpatine and Crate. Crate did everything that he needed to. He very rarely went overboard, and even when he did, it was based on his own pragmatic reasons. Like, yeah, even if they were wrong, he actually legit believed in them. Palpatine just did it because me, I want more power, gimme.
Yeah. Okay, so next question. Just give me a second here. Favorite original trilogy film?
Empire Strikes Back all the way. That's not even a complete question for me, just because Empire does the most to expand the universe in a lot of ways. It adds a lot new elements. One, it actually fully displays what the Empire is capable of. Because at this point, it's like they're not revolving around a giant space station anymore. Now they're like, okay, these rebels destroyed our space station. They are causing havoc. We are going to go in and kick their ass. That's literally their attitude the entire movie.
Yeah.
And it's signified through Vader, where Vader's character is expanded both because of the lengths he's willing to go to win, but also because there is a hint of compassion in there that sets up Return of the Jedi. Like a good example of this is two. One is Luke, obviously, and this extends to even when Palpatine talks to Vader, and Vader responds with Palpatine's line saying he's just a boy, Obi-Wan can no longer help him, which is almost, I almost think it's his way of pleading with him, like, please do not make me kill him. Like, and then it's further solidified where after Luke and all them escape, Piet screwed up. Well, in a way.
R2 to the rescue.
It's like Piet screwed up, the Admiral, and Vader doesn't even bother with him. He just doesn't have it, even disregarding, everything, he just doesn't have it in him to do it, to like get mad. He's just like, well, dang, I just lost my son. Crap.
And that's why, like, oh crap, he's gonna force choke somebody.
Yeah, and he never does. He just, and considering that Piet's in Return of the Jedi, it's clear that at this point, Vader actually has grown to respect the guy. So,
unlike Ozzel, who was basically just a power-hungry person and just did not care much.
That's Imperials for you. But that's the big thing. So I kind of enjoy it with that, the introduction of Yoda and really understanding what the light side, dark side conflict is, in a sense, because A New Hope doesn't really cover that. A New Hope introduces the foundations of what the Force is. And, they say Vader was seduced by the dark side, but we never really gain a grasp of what the dark side is or what it does until Empire, where Empire, Yoda downright states it. The idea is that the Empire feeds on fear and aggression. It feeds on the dark emotions, and that the dark side isn't technically stronger than the light. It just offers quick and easy results. But every time you use it, it comes at a cost. It's like making a deal with the devil. You get what you want out of it, but it always comes at a cost. Yeah, every time.
Unfortunately, that's one of the big. It's kind of one of those.
It has an addicting nature to it.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those. It's like a Greek tragedy in a way. Like Anakin is basically the ultimate Greek tragedy. If I had to make a comparison,
Anakin's story is similar to that of the idea of Lucifer, the fallen angel.
Yeah.
Okay.
Empire's my favorite too, out of the originals. Least favorite, original trilogy film.
Return of the Jedi. Overall, it's still a good movie. It still has really good qualities, but there are things about it that kind of make it not live up to the previous films quite as well. The main one being the idea with the Ewoks, and the pacing is kind of all over the place. Like A New Hope is a very gradual pacing because it's introducing everything. Empire maintains a very fast pace because of, the hunting of the rebels, the Luke's training and everything like that. It really has everything flow well. Return of the Jedi, nothing really happens in the middle of the movie. It's just kind of weird shenanigans. Again, especially when you get to Endor with the Ewoks.
There was a speeder chase, but other than that.
But again, it doesn't really add anything to the story. It's not really consequential. Everything in Empire had consequence. There was always, no action sequence was pointless because there was a very clear grasp of what would happen within those. I kept it had a good sense of energy to it. And then another thing, and this is kind of where I, for some reason, Han is kind of bland in the movie a little bit.
He still has his wit, but there is one thing I did like about Return of the Jedi. It was, during the land battle when Han is basically like, okay, I got an idea. Well, I'll disguise myself as an Imperial officer because that trick never fails. He gets all the troopers to come out, and then he he has this smug look. It's like, what you gonna do? You're surrounded by man-eating teddy bears.
I mean, that's the whole thing. It's like the film has a lot of great moments. And I'll even admit, once when it gets to the climax, the movie really picks up. Once when it hits the climax between Endor, the space battle, and of course the conflict between Luke, Vader, and the Emperor. That's when the film really picks up and goes on 11. It's just, it takes a while to get to that point, and it's kind of like a lot of the other stuff is either dumb or just kind of is slow as crap. Like, for example, take the Jabba's palace scene. It's a good sequence, but did it really have any reason to be as long as it was? Like, if Luke was just going to take his lightsaber and cut everyone down anyways, why didn't he do that from the start?
He
It's like,
he was trying to give Jabba a chance to, you know.
I know, but it's like you go from sending Lando in disguise, where he's there to know if Jabba accepts the deal. Then you have Leia come in
She gets
with
caught.
Chewie, where she gets caught, and then Luke comes in. You have the shenanigans with the Rancor, then the shenanigans with the Sarlacc, and finally, after all that, Han Solo gets rescued. That's the problem. It's too much happening for the sake of one plot line, which is just to rescue Han, which the same thing could be accomplished in 15 or so minutes.
Yeah. Well, my least favorite is probably Special Edition New Hope.
I mean, the special editions kind of damage everything to a degree,
Except
especially.
Empire because it was barely touched.
Well, Empire's the exception only because, yeah, it was barely touched. And I'll even admit, most of the scenes in Empire that it did touch actually did improve. Like, for example, adding Windows in Cloud City and the Emperor actually being Ian McDermott. I
Well,
didn't like how they changed the dialogue, but having Ian McDermott as the Emperor was good.
actually, and also a little more of the cloud car, and actually a lot. There's other things, but I did like it. It's that's the only instance where the special edition didn't completely ruin everything.
Well, I wouldn't say ruin everything. I mean, thankfully, the special edition didn't change really anything in the grand scheme of the plot. So, for the most part, like the rest of the film is still intact. It just has moments of just getting annoyed.
Yeah. Okay. So next question: favorite prequel trilogy film?
Revenge of the Sith all the way.
Ah, I picked the Phantom Menace.
Oh dear. All right. Gentlemen, ladies, time to get this debate started.
Oh boy, here we go. Okay, so I'm not gonna say that the Phantom Menace is a perfect film. It's not. It's flawed.
None of the prequel films are perfect. What are you talking about?
But to me, the Phantom Menace did it. Basically, it had good characters. It gave us Ewan McGregor and Liam Neeson. Now I do have to point out that Jake Lloyd and the the actress who plays Shmi Skywalker, they were really good. And when they have their moment of saying goodbye, that was a really good moment. And the pod race is pretty cool, especially with the extended version of it, which is really awesome. Um, I do like how the there's certain things I do and I'm not gonna nobody likes Jar Jar, but I can actually kind of see some light for him because there's this one scene where they're underwater and the sub loses power after getting attacked by the Gooba fish, and he's actually right because Qui-Gon says, "Relax, we're not in trouble yet," and he says, "There's monsters in the water. The water's leaking into the submarine. We're sinking, and we have no power. When the hell do you think we're in trouble?" And then, Obi-Wan fixes it, and it's like, well, and then there's a freaking monster. It's like, okay, when the hell did that happen? But I can still see the arguments made against the film.
I mean, so here's the thing. My arguments against the film really just stem from two issues. One, pacing is kind of all over the place. You know, it's like it actually suffers a similar problem to Return of the Jedi, where it's kind of like the midpoint of the film is really slow.
Oh.
And it kind of becomes a crawl at that point. Like the beginning of the film is fine, and close to the end of the film is fine. And I'll even admit, in the midpoint, the pod racing scene and everything related to that is really good. I'll confess that. But everything else kind of runs into the problem where it really doesn't move. It's kind of like, you know, you have these scenes that are nice, but then after a while you're like, okay, move on. Move to something else. And that's why I think Revenge of the Sith is better overall, because it doesn't really fall into that problem. Every scene in Revenge of the Sith, well, most scenes, have a sense of purpose behind it. Like, you have the opening, which is action-packed, has a great load of stuff. You know, Battle of Coruscant. Mm-hmm. When that's done, you get into the plot line where it establishes Anakin's connection with Padme, how it's developed, and then Anakin's nightmares and the relation of Anakin and Palpatine, and the whole getting appointed as the spy. And you account for that, and then you have the Jedi trying to wrap up the war in order to, you know, essentially try to get Palpatine out of power. And then you have all that lead up to
Order 66.
Palpatine. And then Order 66. And after that, there's just a really good sense. Feels unnecessary, I guess you could say. It's just a lot of the shenanigans with Obi-Wan and Grievous. But even then, it's kind of like, even though it's not the most necessary, it is entertaining to watch.
There's actually a deleted scene in...
That's why I've always had...
Sorry. Okay.
I know about the deleted scenes.
No, there's actually a deleted scene
where that's supposed to be.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
So like the whole thing is like Obi-Wan and Grievous and all of that. And I also like how the film does ask a lot of questions. It does a lot of things to expand the lore, similar to why I like Empire. You know, they actually have very similar reasons why I like it, even though I'll admit Empire objectively is a better film, but they both kind of have the same merit in a way, where Revenge of the Sith expands the lore. It sets up this idea of actually questioning the Jedi's validation, which I really like, because up until that point, we never really got that. You know, we never really got the idea of someone actually challenging the POV of the Jedi in a way that wasn't just pure black and white. You know, like, yeah, Palpatine's saying it and we know he is evil, but still, the things he's saying do kind of make sense, especially his relation of saying all who gain power are afraid to lose it, that the Jedi are trying to preserve their position just as much as he is. And that at this point, he's not even really trying to paint himself in a better light. He's just saying, are the Jedi truly as good as you think they are? And, you know, that it's a good question that's brought up, and also everything with Darth Plagueis, and obviously you have the big thing with Order 66, which just does really good connective tissue with the original trilogy. So by then, it's just, when you put it all together, you have a movie that, while I can't say is the best Star Wars movie, it's the most Star Wars movie.
Yeah, I can.
It has the most of what you expect out of a Star Wars movie.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so next question.
And also Anakin getting defeated on Mustafar, and Obi-Wan's emotional breakdown was heartbreaking.
Oh my god! And also the like when Anakin is getting having the surgery of him having the suit put on, that was actually kind of interesting.
Well, there's a lot of terrifying things about it. I think if there was one complaint I had with Revenge of the Sith, other than occasionally the awkward dialogue,
Oh god.
is probably, I would say, there's a small lack of connective tissue, and that's kind of an issue with it. Where, ironically, that's why the novelization is so good, because it actually fixes a lot of those problems. Where it's kind of like it connects why the Jedi are so suspicious, why they have everything, and they get in connection with the EU a lot as well.
Yeah.
So, but even just looking at it in the confines of the movie, it's like when you take the movie, it's like an 8 out of 10 experience. When you read the novel, it's full on 10 out of 10. It's literally perfect.
Yeah.
But I digress. So that's my opinion on the matter.
Okay. So we got two more questions here. Favorite Star Wars video game?
Ooh. Either OG Battlefront 2 or The Force Unleashed.
Hmm.
I mean, the problem with that is I love both, but for very different reasons. Battlefront 2, I just love the immersion of the Star Wars sandbox and just feeling part of the movies and just partaking in these epic battles. And I also love the campaign with kind of the clones' perspective on Order 66 before that later gets retconned by TCW. Um, as for The Force Unleashed, I enjoy its combat a lot, and I'm very gripped by the story with Galen Merrick. The idea of being trained your whole life to be used as Vader's weapon, and then actually kind of growing into your own person, essentially,
Yeah.
and helping laying the foundations for a lot of the future events is kind of, it's a nice story. And I know many people say, oh, Galen Merrick is a Gary Stu, and I'm like,
no, he's not.
not really. I mean, partially, but it's not. Galen Merrick had very extreme circumstances that defined him. And the thing was is that his character was very flawed and had a lot of issues. And it took him the entire story to even just overcome Vader. Like, this was a guy who was tormented by Vader his entire life. And it's kind of like, again, it's kind of like having an abusive dad, basically. You know you have to break away from him because it's what's good for you, but by the same token you just don't have it in yourself to do it. Like, even when Vader screwed you over, he's still coming back to him.
Yeah, that's. And also, I really like the Force.
And it took at the end of the game to realize that I don't need Vader. I got these people that actually care. I got Juno, I got Coda, I got Proxy, I got all these people that legit care about me.
Yeah, I could.
That's a really good story.
So yeah, my two favorites are OG Battlefront 2 because I grew up on that game, but also KOTOR 1, just because the characters are so well written and they're really really good, and also because HK-47.
I mean, I love KOTOR as a story a lot. The only problem is I'm not the biggest fan of RPG style games. So that's kind of my problem. It's like, looking at it as a story, it's incredible. It's literally a masterpiece. I'm just not the biggest fan of its combat. So,
Yeah.
and it's not even that I think the combat's bad. Like, it's really good. It's just not the style of game that I'm used to playing or really enjoy playing. So that's why, Knights of the Old Republic doesn't have as much of an impact on me as it does for a lot of other people.
So what's your opinion on Jedi Fallen Order?
Um, are we looking at this as a game or as a story within the Star Wars universe?
Both.
As a game, great combat, a lot of good variation with the levels. Backtracking can be a chore, and it needs more end game content. As a story, I think it does really well. It actually captures the spirit of what I like out of Star Wars stories, with the sense of self-discovery and overcoming guilt and all of that, because that's the thing. Cal Kestis had a lot of inner demons just based on his guilt, And it took him a while to realize that none of it was his fault. There was nothing he could do, and it took him that to realize, yeah, my master didn't die because of me. He died to save me. And that the best thing I can do is just to honor what he taught me. And that, in connection with the contrast of Trilla's arc, because that's what's great. It's like Trilla as a villain does very good because her dark reflection of Cal is actually very similar. It's kind of like a mirror reflection. While Cal is being weighted down by his guilt, Trilla is being weighted down by her resentment.
Also, I do freely admit, Vader's entrance and the whole thing with Vader. Oh my god, that was genius.
Well, yeah, I mean, Vader's involvement in the game at the tail end is really nice, but it's just kind of like it's like a cherry on top of the milkshake for me. It's great, but it takes it's just a nice bonus to what is already a really good story. Like Vader, even if Vader wasn't in the story, it would still be really, really good.
Yeah, and also because you're basically like the game tells you just run. Like there's nothing you can do against him.
Well, of course, and that's part of the lore with Vader, where he's virtually unstoppable by this point. So there's a lot of good things with that.
Yeah, hang on a sec. Okay. Sorry to cut this short, but I gotta go.